Welcome, welcome. Happy Wednesday night. We have a lot of just like sickness going on around. I feel like there's not as many of us tonight live, which is totally okay. I know a lot of people do also like carve out the time, see what I did there, on Thursday or beyond to watch the recordings of this. But we're here. We're definitely still gonna dive into this and I'm excited. It's kind of like we're like going out to get some tea or coffee. We can talk about it. Hold on. I'm gonna let a few people in or one more person. So tonight's focus is going to be carving out the time for ourselves. I think that's like the overarching theme. And I like the word carving because I think it kind of gives a good image of that because that's really what it feels like sometimes. Like self-care and making time for yourself. I'm gonna be blunt. I don't think it ever just appears as a
Mm.
mom. I don't think it ever just like creates itself because there's just so many other things. So one of my clients the other day shared this reel with me, and I want to share this story to kind of open us up because it like really touched me and it was just so well done. I wish I knew her name so I would actually give this girl credit, but basically she said, you're going to get some coffee with a friend, you guys have made plans, right? And you're super excited. I can't wait to see you, can't wait to catch up. You show up at the coffee shop, your friend is nowhere to be seen. You give a call up, you're like, hey, like, what's going on? Why aren't you here? And your friend's like, oh, sorry, like, just really tired. I just couldn't really find the time or energy to like meet up with you today. I'm sorry, let's reschedule. And you're like, okay, no big deal. Like, what, tomorrow? And your friend's like, yeah, sure, I can do it tomorrow. That's fine. I'll be there. Hang up, show up at the coffee shop tomorrow. Friend's nowhere to be seen again. And little by little, like, do you think you're going to trust that friend for a third time?
Now you're
Probably.
starting to get mad.
Yeah, starting to get a little aggravated, and then you call your friend again, and you're like, "Hey, like two times in a row, seriously, like what's going on?" Like no longer trust the words like you did that first time, right? Like we can forgive, we can totally forget, we can move on,
Mm.
but the more that the ball is dropped, and the more that this friend does not show up for you, the less you're going to trust them, and the less like confidence you're going to have in this friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to think of how many times, like in our own lives, we've done that to ourselves. How many times have we said, like, I'm going to show up for me? I'm going to start this health journey on Monday. I'm going to start making time for myself tomorrow, or whatever the case may be. And like, how many times have we not shown up for ourselves? And it
Yeah.
really is that same type of script and like story of like over time, your priority for yourself and like your self-esteem really, it just
Mm.
starts working its way down the list. And you
Yeah.
really kind of start having that internal dialogue of like, am I even going to show up for myself? Can I even do this? Like, am I actually ever going to find the time? So I want to start off by saying, like, we will make time for things in our lives that are priority. Bottom line, if we think something is important, we will invest. We will make time for it. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
reflect on that for a second. And I'm not doing this to shame anybody. I think it's this honest conversation we need to have because that's where the work is. Like, I can't tell you that you have, like, oh, go make yourself a priority. Like, that's a lot of self work. That's a lot of internal dialogue that we need to practice. But
Mm-hmm.
bottom line is, like, we have to make the agreement with ourselves that we are a priority, or else it's never going to happen. Like we're never going to be able to show up for ourselves the way that we would for a friend
Mm-hmm.
until we agree with ourselves that we're important enough to show up,
Yeah.
So let's kind of start there. Like, what do you guys like? What are ways that you do carve out time? What are ways that you've struggled? And I think that like internal dialogue and agreement that we have to make is something that we should dive into.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna just say I am not good at this. This is an area of struggle for me. But I was thinking as you were talking, I love the idea of the carving out and really like it's an act and it's like it's intentional, right? And for me, I was just thinking to myself as you were talking, like the things that I show up for and the things that I don't. And so typically for me, it's like buy-in. How do I know that what I'm going to do is going to add value to my day or my life or whatever? And then what's the result? And some of it is impatience. Do I see an immediate result, right? Or not, right? We're always looking for that instant gratification, which I hate to say that I lean into at times, but I definitely do. And then recognizing that there is actually value, like allowing yourself to test it out enough to see that there is going to be value in it. And I think that's the thing too, is you got to be able to commit, right? Like that's the thing. Like to me, like this, okay, I said I'm going to come to this mom's group. I want to be here. So I made an intentional choice in my mind. That's going to be in my calendar and I'm committed. So it's like doing that same thing with yourself. But then it's also your internal dialogue that justifies why that's a necessity. Because I think the other piece too that comes in is there's always that narrative, at least in my head, that says, put it down the list. Oh no, okay, my little one has this going on. My husband wants us to do this weekend. I promised so and so I would show up for this thing. I've got to volunteer for the preschool. And it's like all of a sudden you start feeling yourself lower and lower and lower. And I think the more variables you add into your life, the lower you start to place yourself on the list, until you make that choice, right? Until you actually fully commit. So, yeah.
No, I think that's beautiful. And it's funny because when you can become in tuned with like your energy and your body too, you know when this is happening. You know that feeling of just like run down, you're being run ragged. And it actually is like you might actually physically not have energy, but you know that feeling of actually mentally not having energy. Like you want to crawl in bed and literally just turtle yourself. Like you're so overstimulated, you know, like there's just so touched out. Like we have to get better at also being aware of that. Because I really believe that it is like a natural instinct for us to take care of ourselves, but we push it down as if like we're not supposed to take care of ourselves. You know, and there's this expectation as a mother that's like, no, we have to be this martyr of like kids come first, your family comes first, everyone else has to be taken care of. And then maybe that little sliver of a 20-minute Netflix show before bed, like that's my me time, you know, and I'm not shaming that if that's what you do. There's nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is make sure that that sliver of time is enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's more, is it enough?
Amen.
And with that is recognizing just like our best is gonna be different on different days, that is it enough is also going to be different on different days, right? And I think this still ties back into our last series, right? Or our last episode where we talked about self-advocacy. Because that awareness piece linked with self-advocacy is you having a trusted person, whether it's your partner, a family member, a friend, whatever it is, who can help you at times. So you can say, hey, you know what? I need a break. Is there any way you could help by doing whatever? You know, like even tonight, I was like, you know what? I don't have it in me to make dinner. Can you do that tonight? And you know what? For the first 2 years of my little one's life, I would have just still done the dinner. And I'm like, no, I need to, there's got to be a little bit left over in the cup. So the next day, I have something else to give, right? So I think that's the challenge, is recognizing it, advocating for it, and then following through. And I feel like too, that's honestly usually leaning off of feeling depleted anyway. So I need to amp it up a little bit more too. I feel like I need to give myself an extra layer where I'm not at that like depleted place, right? But that also ebbs and flows based on circumstance, which I recognize. So I don't know.
No, I love that. I mean, does anybody else want to kind of share what they do to carve out time for themselves? So like ways that have worked for them or ways that they've struggled. And we'll continue to talk, but think about it for a second. I would love to hear from people. And honestly, if you're watching on the recording, put it in the comments. Like I would love to hear the way that people carve out time for themselves because I think we all struggle with it. And it's a work in progress. And then as we evolve and transform and our kids get older, it's going to change. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I know right now I'm in the thick of it. Like I got a 1-year-old. So like my me time, not so much.
Limited.
And yeah, it is very limited. And I think that as like your kids' needs evolve, I think sometimes like things do shift. So I love to hear moms of like every stage, you know, like what does that look like for you? And something that I've noticed lately as I'm really trying to carve out that time, I feel like you gotta do it. I gotta carve it out is like I've noticed a drastic change in my children, more so my 4-year-old because he's more aware. My 4-year-old's behavior when I am carving out time for myself every day. And I'm not running around on that depleted mode. I'm not run down my energy. I'm not short my patience. I mean,
That's huge.
right? Like there's a lot that goes into that. Like just stopping to like feed yourself, you know, like fueling your body properly, getting your energy to a place where then you can actually serve your children. Like it always comes back to that. Like it always comes back to when you serve you, you will therefore then be able to serve the others the way that you want to.
Mm,
You know, and I do think that carving out that time for ourselves, like not only models for them that it needs to be done, but it also they know, even if it's on a subconscious level, like they know when mom isn't having a great day. Like they
mhm.
totally can feed off of that energy, you know? And I see it. So it's kind of this weird double-edged sword. Like we think that we're great because we're the martyrs taking care of everything. But if we're letting ourselves get depleted, who actually suffers? Not just us, like our kids. So I think sometimes like that perspective changes things a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think too, some of it is like learning to say no.
Mm.
For me, that like carving out time is also being able to say, no, not doing that today, or I'm really sorry. But, being that friend that on the first time, hopefully, right? That's like, and gives them a heads up. But like, you know what? I gotta do some me time. Like this past weekend, my husband's very social. He loves to be around people. And I like it too, but I'm not gonna lie, I definitely like get my energy back from some me time. And so this past weekend, I was like, you know what? I need to just be like home and chill. Like that's what I'm gonna do for me this weekend. If you want to make a different choice, that's okay. But this is how I'm gonna navigate this weekend. And before I would have tried to like go with whatever. Um, but that to me is super helpful because that allowed me to like re-energize over the weekend so that next week where I started back up, I could be more present, right? And same thing, like my little one's been sick over the last week, saying, you know what, I'm sorry, but I don't have the energy for nighttime TV shows. I need to go straight to bed. Like those are things that I would have tried to, you know, I feel like we're trying to satisfy all these spaces, right? We want to make our kids feel like we're there and we're present for them. We want our partners to feel that way. We want our job to feel that way. And sometimes setting those boundaries of like, hey, right now, I can't do that is super, super helpful. And that has been a real challenge for me in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like this is one of those topics where I am like very actively working on this. Like, and I don't think that, like, I hope people watching this know that we're never, I was just saying this to Geraldine before the call, like, we're never coming from a place of a pedestal. Like, that's really what this moms group was created for. Like, I want people to know I struggle with this. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
do this type of like mentoring and coaching for a living, and I struggle with this. you
Yeah.
know, and it is like, I think that when we start to bring in like, just let alone like, yeah, you can talk about your family unit, but now we're talking like friends, jobs. We're needed in a lot of different places.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what does that do? Like, all it does is pile up on our plate. And again, like you said earlier, like the priority list, like, if sometimes you're not number one, it's funny. My mentor Mara says this too, and I love the way she says it. She's like, you don't always have to be your number one priority, especially as moms. It's not going to happen all the time, but you got to be at least in the top three.
Mm,
Like you got to be at the top of the list. Maybe not number one, but two or three. And if you start getting down to four or five, like it is time for some reflection.
yeah.
That's when it's going to be a slippery slope because life externally, like I hate to say this, I don't mean it to sound negative, but that stress and the chaos and obstacles and the storms and all of that, like you can't avoid that.
No.
No, you can't. Like there's always going to be things that are going to try to literally blow you off your course. And it's like all you really need to do is worry about, how do I ground myself?
Yeah.
How do I get my feet so sturdy and anchored into the ground, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of the things, right? Like that is your one job. You can't control outside of your house. You can't. And the more you try, I think the more anxiety rate rises, the more stress
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to create for yourself because you can't control it. It's always going to
100%.
be there, right? It's like all you, it sometimes it's a little bit freeing for me to think that, like, I only have to worry
Mm-hmm.
like you just have to ground yourself so that when that tornado, I'm like, Anya, I'm like outside of your house is going, you're like, you're grounded, and there's like, you are much less likely to get blown away into the chaos if you are taking care of yourself.
Well, and you lose yourself, right, in the process. And I think that's something that Jill brought up last time is that question of like, what do I even like to do? What even fills my cup? And I think it's easy to get sucked in to this whirlwind of our life. I mean, I was thinking about my day. I feel my shower time is my real therapy. I'm like, that's where I do my like reflecting, a lot of like stuff, you know, exits my brain. And I was like, dang, my day was so stressful. Like my day was so chaotic. It was so busy. I didn't feel present. I just felt like I was in a storm, right? And coming out of that space where you've got lots of people asking different things of you and you're trying to like juggle a million things and then shifting into a different role also is a challenge at times. And then being present enough with yourself to say, hey, what do you need? What do you need right now? Tell me what you need. And then being like, you know what? I'm going to put away the guilt of feeling like, well, I haven't been with my child all day, but I also feel overstimulated from all the conversations I've had at work. And I'm going to actually tell myself, you know what? I'm going to take 20 minutes to do something by myself and let her play, or she can play with her dad, or she can help him make dinner. And I'm going to do something for me because the next interaction I have with her will be way better if I do that. And that is like super hard, but also super necessary, right? And I still have that guilty feeling pop into me. Like, I was like, I just need, for me, the talking a lot is exhausting, and my job requires a lot of talking. And I was like, I need to just like sit at my computer. I have a huge job I have to get done this week. And I need to just like sit for like 20 minutes in quiet and not chat with somebody. And you know what? She still wanted to be with me. So I was like, whatever. She can watch TV next to me. We sat next to each other. I quietly did my thing. We set a timer. She did her movie for a while. And then we had dinner. And when I was at dinner, I was fully present. I was ready to be engaged. I was ready to ask about the days. I was ready to participate. Had I hopped into playing with her, I wouldn't have been that person, you know?
I love that. I think that's something because again, going back to that mom guilt feeling, we're always going to come back to mom guilt because I think it's just this like innate whenever we put ourselves first, I think mom guilt's always going to creep on our toes. But I love the way you put that. Like, that was such a great perspective. I hope people listening to this, they're like, I hope, like, put that in your bucket for later. We need that because you're right. Like, that little bit of mom guilt is worth it because, like you just said, that next interaction, 20 million times better than it would have been.
Yeah.
Totally. And I hear it a lot too, just like, because I connect with a lot of people on like, in my, obviously for my job, but just in general. And I hear this a lot too of like, I'm just too busy.
Mm,
That word has become my least favorite word on the planet, you know, because it's just like, when you really boil that down, like, you're too busy for yourself? You're too busy for you? You know, and imagine like your kids someday, like, do you want them to be too busy for themselves? Like, self-care is a skill. It is like a muscle that we have to practice, you know? And I think that as we're raising humans, I think we need to teach it. And the only way we're going to teach something I mean, let's be honest, it's extensive, you know, and I think it takes trial and error. It's not just like, I know some people always tell me like, just go, I don't know, people will give you all these like self-help, you know, strategies. And I tried so many and I'm like, this isn't working for me. What's wrong with me? You know, like it's taken a lot of shifting, a lot of like, that doesn't work for me. And it
yeah.
didn't mean that I failed. It just means that I haven't found something to like fill my cup yet, you know? Gloria, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm in a completely different place than y'all. Um, this is my second go around with kids. I have a 30-year-old daughter, and I am now raising a 9-year-old and 8-year-old boys. So, uh, I am disabled. I have medical issues, so I'm at home.
Mm,
Um, when they're at school, I'm alone.
mm,
So I'm kind of in a place now because we've been here in Illinois now, I think like almost 4 years, and I know absolutely nobody besides the people at the grocery stores I go to every week.
mhm,
So while I'm still doing self-care and having time for myself, part of the time that I spend alone, I'm trying to figure out, what do I do with me? Who am I?
mhm,
What is it that I'm needing? Because there's something else I need to do with my life.
mhm.
And so that's kind of in my place. I I'm lost and don't really know what to do with myself now.
Well, hey girl, you're not alone. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. One of the things that I was thinking about was another thing is how we show up for ourselves, right? And like as our different chapters of our life, right? We shift and we become new people and we're rediscovering ourselves unless we lose ourselves along the way, right? And then that rediscovering is going to be harder. Um but I mean, I feel like I've been watching a lot of leadership videos and people talking about how they spend their time and what's efficient use of time and what's not. And this idea of busy, but you're scrolling on your phone at night. Is that inefficient time? Is that efficient time? And what actually is making you feel fulfilled versus what's mindless um, time spent, you know? And I think that's something too. I definitely have the guilt of like feeling like I'm not always showing up for myself, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like there's things I want to do with my life, but I haven't fully grasped what that's going to look like and how to access it, right? So I call this the research and development stage of my new season of life. And it sounds like you're in a similar space, right? You're in the research and development space, and although it might feel stagnant or like stuck at times, it's really just as important or necessary as any other step, right? You're kind of sorting through the stuff. And I remember my sister said to me one time, and I think this is true of general life, right? She was like, Alex, You're going to go and you're going to do certain jobs. And sometimes you're just going to figure out all the things you don't want to do. And you might feel like you're showing up to all these things that aren't meant for you, but that's just as important as finding the thing you're meant for, because all of that is useful information to get you where you need to go. So I feel like just keep sorting and you're going to be like, not for me, not for me, not for me. And then there might be something that you're like, ding, ding, ding. Well, this feels right. Let's lean into more stuff like this. And at least that's how I'm looking at it right now, because I definitely feel like my movement in certain spaces isn't as fast as I want it to be, or it's not as pointed as I'd like it to be. But even if I spend 10 minutes a day learning a little bit more about me, I'm closer to where I need to be. So you're not alone.
I'm honored to have you here. I love that. I'm gonna piggyback on that a little bit. Like I feel like there's this quote actually. I shared it today. I'm gonna share it right now too, that it's honor the space. I have to read it because I want to make sure I get this right. Honor the space between no longer and not yet. So really like think about this as almost like there's a blank canvas in front of you, and it's like you weren't just meant to be the caterpillar. And I think that it's so admirable that you know that you want more. And like, I don't think that, like, I know right now it feels like you're stuck, but that to me is a beautiful thing, that you know that there's more out there for you. Like there are some people that are just okay with that status quo. They haven't been awakened yet, and they would just say like, this is all there is, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's trying to get to that point, like where you are full on, like I'm awake, but then you fall into the comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, well, yeah, unfamiliar territory. I'm okay being stagnant. And then you have those moments where you're like, what the heck is wrong with you? No, you don't. You need,
That's
I
fear, though,
know
isn't it? Isn't that fear?
Absolutely.
a lot of it is probably fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that 100%. When I get my feet stuck in the mud, it's fear. That's
Mhm.
why my word this year is leap.
Mhm.
Because I have that same exact feeling where it's like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do it. And then I'm like, the second I actually put it into real motion, I'm like, no, never mind.
I know where I want to go. It's just, I think, getting the fear out of the way to finally just push it through.
Yeah,
Mhm.
girl, you got it. Yeah, charging the fear that's a part. I
Um,
mean, that's a part of the process. I was once told that if we got our dream life, like everything we ever wanted, just handed to us, that we wouldn't be able to sustain it. And like, think about that for a second. Like, I think there's some serious truth to that, because it takes a lot of like work and lessons and failure and fear and
Mhm.
yeah.
all of this navigating to actually build the life that we want. And if it just got plopped on our laps without those experiences and the navigating, like Alex was just talking about, like those trial and error processes, like I believe that. I don't think that we would be able to sustain it, because that is part of the process,
Yeah, but just once in life, could it just once?
It would be kind of cool.
I mean, I've
yeah,
done all the
we can
fear,
test
the
it out.
challenges, the work, yeah, just
Okay.
once.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay. No, right now, the big thing, I'll get my surgery with over next week. That's a big thing. I'll be able to hopefully walk better, even though I know I'll have some knee issues that'll deal with later. But after that, maybe I can pretty much get my mind into where I need to be and trying to let go next week, because my sister's not going to be able to come and help me.
Mm.
And God love my husband, but the man doesn't know how to cook. Okay, pancakes, waffles, Egyptian food, which is beans, all the stuff I can't have in my nutrition thing right now. So yeah, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Well, you
Well,
know what though? This is why I feel like that internal voice is everything. I know that like we did that survey and that wasn't something that people were like super excited about, but to me that's everything. And that's where I'm doing all of my research and development, you know, is on me. And how do I think? What are the things in my mind that cause me to pause or self-doubt or um live in that space of fear where I question how am I limiting myself based on my own internal voice, right? And then how do I project that onto the people around me? What insecurities do I have that pop up at times that like I mean, my sister and I were talking this morning and I got mad. The reality was it was because I had an insecurity. Luckily, I didn't react in an emotional way. I reacted in a space of love, but it was because I paused. I recognized it was an insecurity and I shifted in my communication. But that's not something I would have done in the past had I not started doing my internal work. You know, I would have just felt like, dang, how I perceive this is the reality, not that, well, what does that say about me? And then how am I making myself more or less sustainable? You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes any sense to anybody.
No, it does. It does.
really does. No, I think I love that. No, I feel like in terms of, I think we'll probably wrap up for tonight. But Gloria, I do want to, I mean, I definitely just want to say to you that first off, you're in a very safe place. And I'm happy that you're here. And just
Or-
please, like, please just lean into this group if you need anything. I mean, that's really what this was developed for, especially during the hard seasons. And I hope that people listening feel that way too. Like there's gonna be times in our lives where we feel like we got a little strength to share, you know, and like we got the
Yep.
motivation and all of that. And I want when you feel that, guys, please like share it. Okay. Put it
Mhm.
in the group, give us that love and the kindling. It's like ignite our fires.
Mhm.
Remember that there's also seasons in life where you need to come to get a little light, you know, and get a little fire and light the lantern, I like to say, light your torch up. So please, if you do feel like you need us, we're here.
Yeah.
I'm here too for anything.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Yeah, and I think too it doesn't get said enough. I've always been like identified as a sensitive person, but there is such strength in vulnerability and sharing your story. It's like exposing parts of you that most people keep so hidden that if you can find a space that allows you to feel like that vulnerability is worthy, right? Because you can put that vulnerability in certain spaces, it won't be worthy there. So you don't
Oh
put it
no,
there.
no.
But in this space, I think it's worthy. And I think you'll find that there's people who will hold empathy for you and recognize that our journeys are unique. And you know, it shows such grit, such strengths, such bravery when we open up parts of ourselves that we don't show everybody, you know?
Absolutely.
So
Alex, your way with words is beautiful.
Yep.
Love it.
I know.
Oh, and it really, honestly, our stories are they are someone's future survival guide. That will be written on my tombstone someday. Like your story is somebody's future survival guide. It is. And if we keep it to ourselves, it's not the right kind of selfish, you know, like this world, we weren't meant to do it alone. So
100%.